Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. This case that we've been covering, Savannah Soto and Matthew Guerra and the unborn child. Luckily, there is more and more evidence coming forth. Just a press conference earlier today, and no one had mentioned yet. I think it just really came out today, based on this press conference, that based on the search warrant that was conducted on the home of Ramon Preciado and his son Christopher, they recovered a firearm. They didn't say what type of firearm. The only indication was that the firearm, they believed the firearm recovered in the search warrant was the gun that was used in the homicides. So we're going to get deeper into that later, but powerful, powerful, powerful evidence. Some of the other things that we've learned, and we just, last night when we went on the air, we took a look into the arrest affidavit, but more near the end of the arrest. It's a 6-page document. And the earlier on document tells about the knowledge that the family had that Matthew Guerra was selling narcotics, and in fact using his phone and social media almost like a delivery service. To me, that was a huge eye-opener, and that doesn't make the family's pain of losing their son any less, or the family of Savannah Soto and the unborn child. That doesn't make their pain any less. But it's an eye-opener to me that this was known. And to the family's credit, they shared this information with the police. And this information, no doubt, helped in the investigation of this case. Because if you don't tell the truth to the police when a family member has been murdered, who are you going to ever tell the truth to? You want this case solved. You want someone brought to justice that did this. And I give the family a lot of credit for this. So you're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone. True crime from a police perspective. Police off the cuff.
There has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped at 10th and Ranch, Michael Byler.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger.
Joining me today is Professor, retired NYPD Sergeant, man of reason, the affable and the very low-key Professor Mike Geary. Mike, welcome to the show.
Billy, thank you for having me on. Good afternoon, and good afternoon, everyone who's listening.
You know, Mike, I'm running out of adjectives to describe you, but I'll keep inventing new ones anyway. So, Mike, every day we look at this case, and we know that investigations move slowly, or they move at the pace that the police, and the information is disseminated at the speed that the police want to give it out. And a lot of times when, I say it all the time, you want fast information, I'll give it to you. You want accurate information, you're going to have to wait, And that was always the story on the NYPD. Oh, the chief isn't happy that, hey, dude, tell the chief I can't invent shit. I can't invent it to give to the press. We have to wait till certain things occur. And we can't tell some things because it can compromise the scope of the investigation. But as we move along, more and more truths are coming out right now. And one of the things we've learned also, Mike, is that the true crime community is very observant.
Oh, yeah.
And they observe things and they start questioning us on it. And sometimes, guess what? we don't have the answers to it.
That's
But
right.
they're very observant, and we try to say, they're right. Everyone's saying this, everyone's saying that. Anyway, Mike, your thoughts on all this new information coming out?
Billy, it's great. The news conference gave us a lot of information, tied up a number of loose ends. The gun that they believe was used, the murder weapon was recovered. And if that is actually the murder weapon, that's great. Ties up another loose end. It's refreshing to see that the families did cooperate with the police. They knew what was going on with Matthew. He was leading a very high risk lifestyle. You don't retire from being a drug dealer. Usually you go out in a coffin, that sort of thing. They knew the dangers to their daughter. And that's one of those things that you see. I've seen it a million times in the Bronx and Manhattan. You've seen it in Manhattan. And it struck us right off the bat, you, me, and Phil, that this was a narcotics transaction, drug hit, drug ripoff gone bad. We called it, and I think some people in the chat room did. They made some really good observations, and that's what it was. We have to look at it for what it really is, not for what we wish it was or something different. This was a cold-blooded killing of the baby and two people.
Absolutely. I'm going to actually pull up the search warrant affidavit on the screen. And this is what was told to the investigators by the family. While waiting for the search warrant, your affiant, and that's the detective who's signing this affidavit, spoke to the families of the female and the male. So he spoke to Savannah Soto and Matthew Guerra's family. It was found that the boyfriend to the female sold narcotics and would use his phone through cellular communication as well as social media to sell narcotics. It was also advised that the boyfriend would post money and narcotics on Instagram. It was stated that people wanted to rob the boyfriend, and it was stated that the boyfriend had been shot at before. The family provided your affiant with the phone number of the female. The family of the male provided your affiant with his phone number as well as his Instagram. When the search warrant arrived at the location, a search of the vehicle was conducted. The search found shell casings in the vehicle. It says shell casing. However, there was no weapon recovered in the vehicle. There was apparent blood transfer on the outside of the vehicle that was not consistent with the boyfriend causing harm to the female. Both the female and male had gunshot wounds to the head, and the male also had apparent drag marks on his back. It was believed that the female and male were killed at a different location, and the vehicle was driven to the recovered location. I just want to comment on a couple of things there, Mike. One is the ballistic evidence in the car, and it says shell casing. It doesn't say shell casing. So did they only recover one shell casing? But that's all they need.
Right.
And there are identifiers on a shell casing, and one is the extraction marks. When a shell is ejected from a firearm after the slide goes back, the primer's hit, and the projectile exits the end, the muzzle of the firearm. I'm using all these crime scene terms. Then the spent shell's ejected. Those ejection marks on the side of the shell are unique to the firearm that created it, as is the firing pin mark that's left on the primer. So there's two areas of identification there. And that would go into a computer system called IBIS, which stands for Integrated Ballistic Identification System. And they can find out the history, well, not the exact history of the gun, but they can find out if that very same firearm has been used in other murders or other shootings by the brass that was left on the scene. Now, I'm not going to get into yet the search warrant where they recovered the gun. We'll get into that later. Another interesting thing we didn't know is the drag marks on the back of Matthew Guerra, which is indicative that he was shot outside the car and dragged inside the back seat of the car. And why specifically would they put him in the backseat? Well, because the perpetrator wanted to move the car. And then potentially Savannah was shot inside the car, and because she's left in the passenger seat. So these are some of the things that we, of course, didn't know. And I guess the arrest affidavit has given us lots of information that we weren't privy to through the police telling us in detail what occurred. But the arrest affidavit is doing this, Mike.
Yeah, Billy, the information about the drag marks, we saw in the arrest affidavit a mention of drag marks, but they didn't say specifically what part of the body. But here in the search warrant affidavit, you've got on the back. So that's really important because this way it shows that either he was killed outside the car in some sort of tussle or not, or just a surprise shot. He goes down, and the Christopher has to the shooter has to now put him in the car. And he's it's got to be a 6 foot tall person. He's probably going to be weighing about 180 pounds at least. He's skinny. Put him in the back seat so you can have drag marks and dirt on his back. Most likely, either he was a very controlled shooter and it was just one shot to both of their heads and no other shots were fired. And he picked up, maybe he was looking. You got to remember, it's dark out. He's all pumped up on adrenaline. He's shocked by shooting these two people. It's probably an automatic. The bullets go out the side of the gun, side of the firearm. One may have landed outside, or maybe both landed inside, but maybe searching around. He grabs one, can't find the other. So they've got at least one, which is terrific. And that really helps them to as they take it to the ballistics lab for analysis. But it does give a really, it fills in all those little blanks like a puzzle. It adds a few more pieces to the puzzle before we get the full picture of what happened in that very brief time frame right before midnight on the 21st.
Susie A., how do you know he wasn't just dragged from the front seat to the back seat? The marks don't show how far he was dragged. Well, by the way that this affidavit is written, it implies that that's not what happened. And because it says, I'm going to read it to you. Both the female and male had gunshot wounds to the head, and the male also had apparent drag marks on his back. It was believed that the female and male were killed at a different location, and the vehicle was driven to the recovered location. That's how I'm taking that. And I believe that the evidence is probably more physical than it's being described around. They're describing drag marks. Is that drag marks in blood? Is that drag marks of, say, rock or cement putting cuts in his back? It's not indicating that. This is just what's being said in the arrest affidavit. Mike.
Yeah, the autopsy report and the detectives will have a lot more information, a lot more specific. But we believe probably, if you're just thinking about how this hit is going to go down, I don't think Matthew was lured away from the car, 100 feet away to talk privately in the dark, shot, and then the shooter then ran over to the car. I think it's more likely than not, this obviously is a very inexperienced shooter. And he probably shot very quickly, 1, 2. So I imagine that Matthew was either right outside the car or he was still inside the car and he had to be dragged out and put in the back seat. But it was very close range, very compact time frame, real quick, 2 shots, and so up close and personal. And I don't think it indicates that he would be dragged, say, 10 or 15 or 20 feet away where they were actually away from the car. I think it was probably right at the car, right there, either right outside the driver's door or right inside the car. And that may explain why also maybe no one so far has come forward and say they heard shots. Being in a car with the windows rolled up, that might have actually acted as a muffler for the shots. And so maybe that's why neighbors, no one, called 911 reporting that we know of, that maybe called 911 report shots have been fired in the neighborhood.
You know what I find disconcerting? I don't know if that's a strong enough word. The fact that his family knew that he was selling drugs posting drugs and money on Instagram and had been shot at before. And that they didn't do, as far as I know, everything in their power to get this young man to get out of this lifestyle. How much more warnings do you need that this is a bad game that you're in, that you've been shot at before? And really, he's not even a smart drug dealer. He's posting stuff on social media. Besides the fact that that endangers your life, it also puts you at a very high risk to get arrested by the popo, and just baffling to me. And again, we feel the sorrow and the loss that the Soto family and the Guerra family, but they all knew about this. So did the Soto family. The mom said, Matthew's a bad boy, a bad guy. And I know no one can prevent their daughter or their son from going out with someone or falling in love with somebody, having a relationship. As an adult, you can't say, I forbid you to see it. It's not going to happen. But this lifestyle, he was heading for a brick wall, and he got it. And so did, unfortunately, the baby, his girlfriend, who was 9 months pregnant with his first child.
Yeah, Billy, it's the families knew, everyone knew what he was involved in, and probably everyone realized that his time on earth was very limited, that he could be dead at any moment. I remember seeing this in the 4.6 and the 3.0. You'd see a lot of families, and once the young man, usually a young man, gets a taste of a firearm in his hand, cash in his pocket, a little respect on the street, he's considered a badass dude. And he's got all the money, and suddenly, he can give girls money, and he feels more attractive. He feels powerful. He's reckless. He doesn't realize how reckless he is. He feels a lot of bravado, and it's live young, die hard. Get rich quick, die trying. And I think that all four of the parents involved on the two families, they knew, and maybe they tried to talk to him. I think Matthew's father was hoping that the birth of his son might change the way he conducted his life and maybe make him clean up his act. I think the father was just, keeping his fingers crossed, hoping for the best, knowing that it probably wasn't going to happen. These kids, they got money. Matthew might have made a lot more money doing what he was doing than his father was, and by a long shot. So all it is money and power and narcotics and excitement, and that's the life he chose. And sadly, I doubt, and there's nothing that the family could have really done to make him change his mind.
Mike, you hate to think, and there's a picture of Matthew Guerra's family.
Yeah.
You hate to think that maybe they put up with it because perhaps part of their lifestyle was being supported by the illegal activity of their son, Matthew. And someone's chastising me in the chat saying, it wasn't just Matthew. She was involved in it too. And something, you're right. The fact that she condoned it, the fact that she went on this rendezvous with him to conduct a drug deal, a drug transaction, she couldn't have turned a blind eye to this. She knew what was happening. As we say, she knew what time it was. She totally knew what time it was, So you're right. Everyone involved here is complicit. Pete Gomez, thank you for the $5 super sticker. The real tragedy is Savannah's mom, because her only other child was murdered as well in 2022. Pete, something? You're 100% right. Evan Soto, 15 years old. 15 years old. Another casualty to the drug trade, right? And we said that in the beginning. That was going to be part of this investigation. Look, and I hate to use this expression, but, birds of a feather flock together. And that's the honest truth to this. So the Soto family, within 2 years, a year and a half, they lost two children. a 15-year-old Evan Soto, and now an 18-year-old, 9 months pregnant, Savannah Soto. So these are the stories that come from the drug trade. These are the stories that come from the street. This is San Antonio, Texas. No different than East New York, Brooklyn. No different than Harlem, New York. No different than Washington Heights. No different than Jamaica, Queens, no different than any inner city area where drugs are prevalent and killing the young people in this country. Everywhere. But do we accept it? Is it accepted now that the drug trade is just an accepted thing? You don't hear like fighting the drug trade anymore. You don't hear that. The war on narcotics, that's gone away. And I think most people, if you talk about the political end of it, that probably incarcerating drug dealers perhaps isn't the right answer. I don't know. I don't know exactly what the right answer is, but no penalties for it surely is not going to help with anything. Mike.
Yeah, you could look at it as the war on narcotics, on drugs from like the 70s all the way through to just a few years ago. And people claim that it reduced violence in our society and in inner cities and saved a lot of lives in the process by lowering the homicide rate and the numbers killed. I remember one point in 1992 when I was still in the Bronx, we had over 2,000 people killed in New York City in a year. That's like 7 a day. That's insane. Then about 10 years, within 10 years, not even 8 years, 10 years, it was down to about 400 killed a year. That's just over 1 a day. That's more normal in a city of 8 million. Some people advocate for treating the drug issues as a national health emergency, almost like COVID. You can do that and with treatment, but you also have to deal with the violence. That also is part and parcel of it. You can't talk about curing narcotic issues in America without talking about addressing the violence. And it is a sick and unforgiving environment business to work in. And this is what happens. These tragedies, unfortunately, are not the first and not going to be the last. We're going to have a lot more. We've had a lot of cases like this in the past, too numerous to even mention.
Mike, you're so right. And when I hear people talk about social service cures for narcotic sales, and one of the rules, and you've heard it highlighted in movies, don't get high on your own supply, right?
Right.
You've heard that in, I think what was that movie? Carlito's Way.
Yeah.
That was one of the number one rules. Don't get high on your own supply. Most dealers, they're doing it for the money. They're not addicted themselves. So what good is drug rehab going to do them? No, they need some other way to change their ways. Jeff Litwiller, thank you for the 199 super sticker. Boss, did you ever have a gun lead to a second case? 100%. And when I spoke about the evidence, the ballistics evidence in the car, and according to the arrest affidavit, they're saying a shell or one cartridge was recovered. When it goes to IBIS, the Integrated Ballistics Identification System, the extraction marks as well as the firing pin mark are unique to the gun that fired that. You might find out, as we found out in New York City, that a gun sometimes is handed from perp to perp. Like some perp may go up to a perp from Brooklyn may call his buddy in Harlem and say, yo, can I get that burner? I got some work to do this weekend, right? Yeah, okay, just make sure you have it back by Monday, right? So a gun from Manhattan may be used to shoot somebody in Brooklyn. Then it's returned to Manhattan. That gun from Manhattan may be loaned to another thug in the Bronx who shoots somebody in the Bronx. And would we have ever known this before the technology of IBIS, the Integrated Ballistics Identification System? No, but now we do. So is there a potential, is there a possibility that this firearm that was used, and now they have the whole firearm because they recovered it in the search warrant. So they have the serial number on it, as long as it wasn't defaced. They have the serial number on it. potentially they have live rounds in it. They can do a ballistics test on it. Where was the gun purchased? What's the history of the firearm? We're going to find out all of those things. So now it's not just that little shell, that cartridge case that was recovered inside the vehicle. Now we have the firearm to compare with IBIS, Integrated Ballistics Identification System, to see if it's been used before in other shootings, other murders.
Yeah, Billy, you know, when you talk about that firearm, I want to know where Christopher got the shooter, the hitter. I want to know where he got that firearm from. It appears right now, but from what we know, they haven't told us anything different, that this is his first arrest. Well, he's an adult. I would be surprised. I mean, it could happen that he had never, ever been arrested before. I doubt it. I would imagine he has some sort of juvenile record. I'd like to see if he's ever been convicted in a juvenile court, been found to be a juvenile delinquent based on a robbery with a firearm, because I don't, unless he got that gun to do this particular hit, or it was loaned to him. But if not, I would think that somewhere along the line he's done robberies with that gun before. And right now, until we get other further information, we don't know exactly what the motive is for his shooting two people and killing a baby in right then and there on Charlie Chan Drive. I want to know more about Christopher. I wish I could learn more about him, because that he and the firearm, how long have they been together? And hopefully, if you've got that serial number, like you say, if it wasn't defaced, you may find the history of that firearm, when it was, where it was made, when it was, first purchased, and who has it gone to? How did it get to him? That's what I really want to know next.
Absolutely. Isabel Florence, Bill and Mike, we couldn't convince our family member from getting out of the drug culture life. We turned him in over and over, court-ordered in-house therapy that he ran away from. Look, look, Isabel, it shows you tried to do something. That's enough in my book. You tried to do something and it didn't work. No one's saying, I think every family in this country has someone in their family that has been affected by drugs or that is a drug abuser. It's so common that it touches all of our lives. And that's why I think myself and Mike, we have such disdain for the drug trade and for the people that, the movie business and the music industry, they glorify these people like they're doing something good, because they're successful. They got the bling, they got the cash, they got the dope cars, they got all the cool things. And, when they go out to dinner, they pull out a wad of 50s or 100s, to pay the bill. And something, most of them don't live past the age of 25. But our society looks at that as like something cool. Wow, that dude's never worked a day in his life. And, he's driving, a brand new Mercedes, SUV or Cadillac Escalade. So cool. Oh, did you hear, Pito got shot in the head last night up on Dykeman Street,
Right.
Dykeman. Yeah, that's what happens, So all the people that are admiring you, they're walking past you. They're walking past your crime scene and saying, whoa, I knew that was going to happen, right?
Yeah, Billy, I remember I told you the story about me and Augie got on a 4 to 12 shift one night. There was a call of a kid selling drugs, 16-year-old kid selling drugs out of this abandoned school in the Bronx. And we come up to him and he said to us, this is totally serious. And I laughed. He said, get away from me, you $400 a week flunky. And, Augie and I stopped dead in our tracks and we started laughing because we had just gotten a raise. The NYPD had just signed a new contract like a couple of weeks before. And so whenever the police department signed a contract, it'd be all over the news. So everybody knew exactly how much a New York City police officer was paid. And it came out to $400 a week. And he called me a $400 a week flunky. We laughed. Of course, we got him out of there. But, selling drugs at 16 in an abandoned schoolyard on a 4 to 12 shift is more glamorous because he feels it's going to lead to something. By the time he's 18, he's not going to be selling those drugs. He's going to have other runners doing it for him, other people selling it for him. He's going to feel like he's going to be just rolling the cash, counting his money in one of those bank teller machines that counts all the cash. And that's his aspiration in life, Probably he did not live a long life, I imagine. I don't think he's, 45 years old and a successful businessman at this point. But it just shows you how deeply ingrained that lifestyle and how attractive it is to many people. They don't see it. They feel that they're going to be the ones who will not get shot. It'll always be somebody else, not me. I might get shot at, but I'm never going to get killed. And I'm going to have a firearm on my hip and a girl, on my side. And I'm going to have my boys around me, and nobody's ever going to take me down. And that's just false confidence, but it's deeply entrenched in some of these neighborhoods. And the dealers seem to be the ones who seem to have the money, all the success, all the prestige, all the glamour, and everything else. And they kind of gloss over the fact that, you're probably going to be dead by the time you're 24.
100%. From the chat, Pessa, my mom's best friend's son was dealing drugs. He was like 23. One of his customers was mad at him, came looking for him at his home. He wasn't there, so he shot my mom's friend and killed her. We all could tell these horror stories of things that we've heard or seen or have firsthand knowledge from. Kimberly, could the drug used by the shooters in Israel massacre be on the streets of America? Look, the drugs pour through a lot of the drugs that are coming into this country now, coming through Mexico, of course, come from overseas, come from, a lot of the terrorist nations, Afghanistan, that's where a lot of the poppy comes from. So they come from all over the place. And when you have porous borders and no real enforcement at the borders, it's going to be run rampant. And it's never been good, but probably now it's as bad. And the drug culture has been with us forever. The argument is whether it should be a law, a criminal justice problem, or a public health problem. And that debate will go on forever and ever. Folks, if you like real crime, true crime from a police perspective, then you're in the right place. And if you're not subscribed to us, go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and ring that bell. Share us with your family, your friends, your pets, whatever you've got to do. And if you want to contribute to us, we have a Patreon with 3 different levels. And we also have a YouTube channel memberships with 5 different levels. Police off the cuff, real crime, true crime from a police perspective. I want to get back to the affidavit, and then we'll move on to the press conference. But because the best news that we heard today was that the firearm was recovered in the home search warrant. So that is fantastic. And then we'll get to the ramifications of that and how that connects to certain other things. And also the cell phone investigation, which really broke this case wide open, is the cell phone belonging to Savannah Soto is what enabled the investigators on this case to put a time frame on what occurred and where it occurred. And that's no small thing. During further investigation, the detectives assigned here found video surveillance of 5903 Danny K. The video surveillance found that on December 21st, 2023 at 23:59 hours, a Chevrolet Silverado gray driving with its lights off from the vehicle recovered location. The Silverado pulled in the middle of the back parking lot and parked the vehicle. The victim's vehicle could be seen approaching the Chevrolet Silverado. The victim's vehicle parked next to the Silverado. A heavy-set male exited the Silverado, and the driver's side door of the victim's vehicle opened. The heavy-set male approached the driver of the victim's vehicle and appeared to speak to the driver. The heavy-set male then got a towel from his vehicle and appears to wipe down the outside of the victim's vehicle door where he had touched the vehicle. The driver of the victim's vehicle exited the vehicle for a brief moment and sat back in the driver's seat. The driver did not match the description of the female or the male victim. The Hispanic male got back into his vehicle. The victim's vehicle drove behind the building where the vehicle was found on December 26, 2023. The Silverado followed the victim's vehicle. Approximately 3 minutes later, the Silverado was observed leaving from behind the building where the victim's vehicle was found. The victim's vehicle did not leave the location. It was believed that the victims were already deceased in the vehicle at the time of the video observed. It is believed the unknown driver and heavy-set male observed parked the victim's vehicle at the location in an effort to hide the vehicle. On January 2nd, 2024, the detective assigned provided one of the victim's cell phones to Detective Knox at the Tactical Investigations Unit. On January 3rd, 2024, the detective received the phone downloaded from Detective Knox. The detective found the victim had recently searched the street of Charlie Chan Drive. Due to her affiant's knowledge of the crime scene area, the detective was aware that Charlie Chan Drive was a couple of blocks away from the victim recovery location. The detective was able to discover that the victim's vehicle pinged, that means the cell phone pinged, near Charlie Chan Drive and Cary Grant Drive around 23:50 hours on the night they went missing. The vehicle did not start moving again until around 23:54 hours. The vehicle then traveled to 5903 Danny K. Drive, where the victims in their vehicle were discovered on December 26, 2023. The detective conducted a computer research and was able to locate a vehicle that looked identical to the suspect vehicle seen on camera with the victim vehicle. The detective did research on the owner of the vehicle and found the owner of the vehicle matched the description of the male that exited the vehicle on camera. Homicide detectives went to the vehicle location listed above and found the listed vehicle at the location. While at the residence on Charlie Chan, a person identified as Ramon Preciado reported knowing why the San Antonio Police Department was at his residence. Ramon Preciado informed San Antonio Police Department detectives to speak with his son, identified as Christopher Preciado. Ramon Preciado and Christopher Preciado were transported to San Antonio Police Department homicide to speak with your affiant, who he's referred to, the detectives referred to, while additional San Antonio Police Department detectives searched the residence on Charlie Chan Drive under the authority of a search warrant. So then they go into, I'm not going to read the whole interview and interrogation, but that is also quite interesting because what does the shooter do? The shooter, Mike, admits to shooting both Savannah Soto and Matthew Guerra. However, he comes up with a story that it's somehow a self-defense type thing.
Yeah,
But-
Billy. This
Go
is
ahead,
called
Mike. Go ahead.
this is called an affirmative defense. If you do what they call, if you interpose a complete defense, you say to the charge, you got the wrong guy. I wasn't there. I had no criminal activity that night whatsoever. No criminal mental intentions. No criminal criminal acts. But when you interpose what they call an affirmative defense, you are admitting to doing the actions, the shooting in this case, but you're saying, I have an excuse. I did not form a criminal mental state and then shot people. I had no criminal mental state. Yes, I did shoot people, but I had no criminal mental state. I was actually, in this case, self-defense. I was actually just trying to save my own life. And so, unfortunately for him, if he does go to trial, he's going to have to get up on the stand and explain it. Because when you interpose an affirmative defense, the burden is on you to now prove that that defense is a viable one. You can't, you have a burden of production yourself, even though you're a defendant. So therefore, he's definitely going to have to get on the stand and say something that is going to be totally, in contrast to what the actual physical evidence recovered at the scene is, and what the homicide detectives know, and what the medical examiner's office and the autopsy shows. So by saying what he did, I agree with Phil when we were talking about this the other night. It's actually better that he said that defense and explain to the cops what he thought he should say to them, rather than just immediately lawyer up, because having that lie out there just makes what everything that much more pointing to his own guilt. And so that was fantastic. I'm glad he did that. I'm glad he said it. But can I just make one quick comment about the cell phones there?
Absolutely.
Interesting, when you're reading the arrest affidavit, you realize it's because they're looking at the Miss Soto's cell phone. Miss Soto, as Guerra was driving, Matthew Guerra was driving, Soto's actually probably the one talking to or texting Christopher, saying, where are we going to meet you? So it appears that she actually took part and wasn't just a passive passenger in the car, that she was actually part of the drug transaction in this case, unfortunately.
Very sad. Yeah, very sad, because it really shows culpability
Yeah.
on all levels. I just want to get back to what Christopher said. And of course, after Christopher was taken in, Miranda was read.
Mhm.
And I would imagine that on the scene, once they brought them into San Antonio homicide, I would imagine, and this is how I would have done it, I would have brought them in uncuffed. I would have made sure that they were patted down, they had no weapons on them, because then an attorney couldn't say, well, they were not free to leave. Why did you not read the Miranda right on the spot? And
Right.
why didn't so? I would bring them in unhandcuffed and then bring them in. And then once I started, of course, once you cross the threshold of probable cause, we know Miranda applies. Anyway, so Christopher starts telling us a story, and his story is, in sum and substance, I'll cut to the chase. Christopher claimed that Matthew pointed a weapon at him, and Christopher was able to manipulate the weapon, resulting in the female being shot, referring to Savannah. Christopher then stated that had the weapon pointed at him again, and he manipulated the weapon again, resulting in the male victim being shot. And according to the detective, Christopher Preciado's statement is inconsistent with the gunshot wounds suffered by Matthew Guerra and Savannah Soto, and the evidence located at the crime scene. Christopher Preciado intentionally discharged a firearm at Savannah Soto and Matthew Geary with the intention of causing the death. The actions of Christopher Preciado resulted in the death of Matthew Geary, Savannah Soto, and Savannah Soto's unborn child named Fabian. Some people are asking, well, do you think that was Christopher's gun, or was that gun Matthew's gun? 100% it was Christopher's gun. If that was Matthew's gun, he would have left it on the scene. But a 19-year-old that has his own firearm, he takes it home with him. To me, that is 100%. What do you say, Mike? Conscience of guilt. He wanted to keep his gun.
Right.
Even though it was used in a triple murder, he wanted that gun. So if that wasn't his gun, I believe he would have left it on the scene.
Right.
But because it was his gun, stupidly, he brings it home with him. And the search warrant recovers what, Mike? The gun.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I was thinking something else. Yeah. So thankfully, it was there in his home, probably hidden under his bed or in a drawer somewhere. That's excellent. And the fact is that he can say whatever he wants about Matthew pulling the firearm. And I'm not saying Matthew's a good guy here, but once you get if you get the serial number, you figure out who owns that gun, it'll be a slam dunk for the police. But unless it comes back to being owned by Matthew, then Christopher, sorry, you get stuck with that firearm. That's yours. No two ways about it. And just think about it. If Matthew had the firearm, and he was the one who brought the firearm to the meeting, he would have gotten, who's to say that when you look at Christopher's statements, like Matthew would pull the firearm out and he would have the jump on Christopher, but Christopher got the jump on Matthew. So it's pretty plain to see that that's Christopher's gun. It makes perfect sense that's Christopher's gun. And by now they probably know whose gun it is. And definitely it'll come back to Christopher or some friend of Christopher's, and Christopher's had it for a while. As you say, and as someone in the chat too said a couple of days ago, no 19-year-old is going to give up his gun. No, that gun now has a history. That's his gun. And perhaps, that puts him in very good stead with some people in his neighborhood who he wants to be respected by, because he's now a hitter.
Mike, in addition to the serial number on the gun, the history of the gun, matching the spent shell in the car to the firearm, those are going to link that gun up to the crime. Whether in fact they'll be able to collect a projectile from the corpses, that's another thing. They don't normally do that. They may do it in a case like this. In that case, they could connect the projectile, which a pathologist would have to remove from the corpse, and then compare the ballistics from the projectile to the striations in the barrel of the firearm, which is like pretty much almost like 100% identification. Whether they do that or not, we don't know. But the history of the gun, where it was bought, chances are it's of course a stolen firearm, an illegal firearm. The gun was bought off the street. But even the investigators with the ATF, and they can do the history and the workup on the gun, and we'll know a little bit more about it. But I would say just about 100% that this gun is Christopher's gun.
Yeah.
And the other thing is he was allowed to tell his story after Miranda, and it doesn't match the wounds. The wounds were close contact wounds, which means if they were as reported and not in the affidavit by rumor that they were shot behind the ear at close contact, then his story makes no sense then. But he doesn't understand the science of ballistics or the science of gunshot wounds. But the detectives let him tell his story, and that'll be a very powerful statement when it does go to trial. Don't forget, this is a capital murder case, and he is facing the death penalty. We're going to finally get to it at almost 48 minutes in. We're going to finally get to play a little bit of the press conference here and see what they said. This was today. Of course, now it's been loading for so long, it's not going to play.
Most of the information I have here, I think you've already been privy to. I do have a little bit of new information. The information I'm going to give you, I will answer questions to clarify, but I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about anything else, simply because this is an open investigation and we still have a lot of work to do. So again, my condolences to the families of Savannah and Matthew. By now, everybody's aware of the incidents, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time rehashing facts that are already known, but I will go over them high level. So on 12/26/23, our officers discovered 2 deceased individuals in a Kia Optima, and our homicide detectives at that point began their investigation right on that scene. Detectives learned that both victims were involved in the sale of narcotics and used their cell phones to conduct much of their business. Detectives collected the victims' phones, and with the help of the United States Secret Service, who were able to extract information that led to the development of a possible location of a suspect vehicle that was seen on the surveillance video. That occurred on Wednesday, 1/3/24. Detectives drove to that location and saw the suspect vehicle. They approached the home where the suspect vehicle was, and they knocked on the door. An individual by the name of Ramon Preciado answered the door and seemed to know why SAPD was there and cooperated with the investigation. Both Ramon and Christopher were home and brought to the SAPD homicide office for questioning. During the interviews, both suspects made enough statements to implicate them in the murder. Detectives walked warrants for their arrest. Christopher was arrested on the charge of capital murder. Ramon was arrested on the charge of abuse of a corpse. Yesterday, 1/4, more charges were filed. Christopher was also charged with abuse of a corpse, altering, destroying, or concealing evidence of a human corpse. Ramon was also charged with altering, destroying, concealing evidence, human corpse. Detectives also conducted a search warrant at the home of the suspects where evidence was recovered. There is still an active investigation, and I'm not going to go into too much of the details, as I've previously said, because I don't want to jeopardizing the integrity of the case or make the DA's job any harder once he gets involved in it. The final piece of information I have for you is that the gun believed to be the murder weapon has been recently recovered from the suspect's home, and we'll share that with you. And Joe, would you like to say a few words?
This is the district attorney.
Thank you, Chief. Good morning, everyone. First, I want to thank Chief McManus for inviting me to be a part of this press conference. Before I begin, I also want to extend my condolences to the Soto and Guerra families as they are in the midst of mourning. They are in the midst of grieving for the loss of their loved ones. So I think it would be appropriate for us to give them the respect that is due them during this period. But I do want to say that as I mentioned before, arrests were made. I was confident because I knew the kind of work that happens over here. I know the kind of dedication that the San Antonio Police Department has. They would identify suspects and make arrests, and that's exactly what happened. So I want to commend Chief McManus. I want to commend the entire command staff, and I especially want to call out the lead homicide detective for doing an outstanding job. I'm sure as typical, he may have had others assist him, but I know that his team was working around the clock, and it made a difference because we always want to formulate a suspect as soon as possible. We always want to identify someone who is a perpetrator of a crime as soon as possible, and that happened here. So again, my gratitude to the entire department and specifically to the detectives that were involved in this case. As I have said recently, our job is just beginning, but we have to give SAPD time to complete their investigation. What they do when they, and the term is walking a warrant, when they present an affidavit for an arrest warrant, they only need to present probable cause to a magistrate judge, but that's only the beginning. They have the responsibility to complete the investigation, and I know that they will do that. They will do an outstanding job as that they've done so far. So let's give them the time to do what they need to do. We have 90 days to indict these cases, and so I am sure that they're going to get a prosecution guide, which is the term that we use for a complete file. I'm sure that they will get it to us in the appropriate time and before that 90-day timeline. Again, I want to commend everyone involved in the San Antonio Police Department for doing an outstanding job in identifying suspects and making arrests. Let's let the detectives complete their job. Let's let them file the cases in our office, and then we'll make.
You know, guys, a lot of people in the chat are asking, was the gun used to shoot both of them? He admitted to shooting both of them,
Yes.
just not in the way that the evidence told us. So, yes, it's the same gun that we, according to the chief here, McManus, he said they believe. So do they have the match yet? I don't know. But they believe it's the firearm used in the homicides. And couple the fact that Christopher admits that he shot both of them. Again, just not in the way that it actually occurred.
Make the charging decisions, and we'll go from there. And again, I can't overestimate this. In order to bring justice to the memory of these two victims, and in order to bring justice to the survivors and the family members, it's going to be a long road, but we have to take things one step at a time. So let's do that. Let's let SIPD do their job, and then we'll need some time to review the facts and make those charging decisions. And once a case is indicted, then we'll go to the next step. And I'm sure I will have questions about this. So let me get this out there right now. There have been questions about whether or not this will be something that we will seek the death penalty on. It's too early to tell. I don't know whether or not this is something that we will make that decision. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. As in every other case where we have a defendant who is death penalty eligible, we have a capital crimes committee that will meet, that will make, we will hear a presentation from the lead prosecutor in the court where this case ends up, and then we will discuss the facts that go into making a decision to seek the death penalty. But again, it is too early to tell. We don't want to put the cart before the horse. Let's wait till we get an entire case filed in our office. And once that happens, I anticipate that we will have indictments returned, but we have to wait and let a grand jury make that decision. But after that, then we will take it to the next level and make whatever decisions that we need to. Thank you very much.
I'll take a few questions.
And for the gun that was recovered at the suspect's home, have you guys done any tests, run ballistics on the gun to see if there's been any other connection to crimes?
I will just say that we believe it's the gun that was used in the murder. As far as the testing and the ballistic results go, I'm not sure what they have yet.
Chief, can you help clear something up on the surveillance video? We've had a lot of people reach out. It appears as if someone tosses the towel to Ramon Preciado before he wipes down the door on the sedan. Is that how it played out? What can you tell us about that small part of the scene?
Yeah, that's something we're still looking into. It's something that's been brought up in conversation about this. So we're still looking into that.
So that could potentially be a third suspect or someone that was there while the bodies were dropped off.
As the investigation continues, it could be. I'm not saying it is.
So right there, Mike, that's really new information also.
Mm-hmm.
All of you online folks, the online crime community, mentioned that. Who handed the towel
Right.
to Ramon? And the chief is basically giving credence to that. Yes, we're looking into. There is a third person now. Whether they're going to charge that person or whether that person's going to be a cooperator,
Right.
Obviously a third person has not yet been charged. So I just want, everyone will keep that in the back of our mind, because later on a question is asked about Christopher Preciado's mother and her potential involvement in this.
I'm just saying it is possible.
If someone was there, if there was a second person in that truck, could they be charged with the same altering of a corpse or, essentially moving the bodies? Is that how the charge works?
They could be, but I mean, that's something that would be determined once the level of that person's involvement is understood, if that is the case at all.
We saw videos of police activity on the house of the Preciados where you take the mom. Are you questioning her?
I'm going to leave that question unanswered.
There was the question right there. I'm going to play that back.
They could be, but I mean, that's something that would be determined once the level of that person's involvement is understood, if that is the case at all.
We saw videos of police activity on the house of the Preciados where you take the mom. Are you questioning her?
I'm going to leave that question unanswered.
So is she possibly involved?
Billy,
Could she be charged? Or is it better for the district attorney and to the investigators to use her as a cooperating witnesses and keep the charge over her head if she decides not to cooperate?
That's the way to go, because you would really like, as a prosecutor, to know what Christopher said to his father when they were at that exchange. So if the mother or some other family member was there, they might have heard, a brief exchange about what they were talking about as the father took the towel and what happened when Christopher and his father got home, what conversations took place, and what discussion happened about the firearm. So that's some of the really good information you can get to add to the another piece of the puzzle by hanging something over someone's head, a felony charge over someone's head. So I think the chief is actually, I think that's a good answer. He's not saying a word, but in his mind, he's like, oh yeah, that's either happened, is happening, or will happen very, very shortly.
People in the chat are saying the woman at the house was Christopher's girlfriend, but I believe the question was asked about the mother, not the girlfriend.
Right. Specifically, they said mother.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to go with what they're saying in the press conference. I wasn't privy to know that he had a girlfriend and she was at the house, but the reporter asked if the mother is involved, and you saw that Chief McManus did not want to answer that question.
No, I think that's smart.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Sorry, can you go over the charges one more time on each one of them since they're updating them?
Sure. So the additional charges that were filed were for Ramon. Christopher was arrested on a capital murder charge. Ramon was arrested on a charge of abuse of a corpse. Yesterday, Christopher was also charged with abuse of a corpse. And he and Ramon were charged with altering, destroying, or concealing evidence.
As far as the capital murder charges, would it be 1, 2, or 3? Do you know how many charges that Christopher would face?
It involves all of that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, and any further questions you have, you might want to just refer to the affidavit, arrest affidavit. Okay.
Fiscal, ¿en español nos puede dar unas palabras?
Claro que sí. Pues estamos aquí para hablar, vamos a hacer decisiones with capital murder because we have 2 adult victims. But under Texas law, when
I purposely sped by the Spanish language. I don't understand Spanish, and I think most of our audience does not. So let's have the district attorney here explain it in English. That's what we'll listen to now.
Unborn child, and it's under whatever period of gestation, is that unborn child is considered a person under Texas law for purposes of including an unborn child as an additional count for capital murder. We have every intention, of course, Chief McManus, actually, the sergeant made a comment that they intend to file 3 charges, listing 3 victims. We have every intention of including the unborn child as an additional count for capital murder. But again, we'll have to wait and see when the case is filed. But that's correct. We can charge someone with additional count. While you're asking the question, let me clarify because it's already been asked. Why the father, Ramon Preciado, is not charged with capital murder. Someone can be charged with murder if that person is directly responsible because that person either intentionally or knowingly caused the death of the individual, or that person can be charged with as a party to a murder. But under Texas law, the only way that someone can be charged as a party is that that person has to aid, assist, encourage, or abet the commission of the offense intended. As far as we know, there is no evidence to indicate that the father was involved in the murder. Now that may change as this case develops. The detective is going to continue his investigation. If there's at some point some evidence that the father was in fact involved in the murder, then that can change. But I know there is a common conception that when someone is an accessory, in fact, that we can charge him, but he has to be more than an accessory. In fact, under Texas law, we have to be able to prove that he was a party to the offense. So again, for now, the only one that's being charged with capital murder is Christopher Preciado.
Thank you.
Very interesting, Mike. Some real new revelations today. The first time that I've heard law enforcement admit that, yes, there could be a third person involved in this that potentially could be charged, although the chief didn't want to answer any further. He didn't want to give any further information, which you can't blame him.
No, I think it's good.
He's throwing the information out there. The gun recovered, the gun apparently used in the triple murders recovered, the spent shell inside the car that will match up, if in fact it is the firearm, to the firearm recovered as per the search warrant in the home of Ramon Preciado, Christopher Preciado. The confession of Christopher Preciado of doing the shooting. Of course, not in the way it actually occurred, but that's a confession. He confessed to it. It was a self-serving confession.
Right.
But he confessed to it. He did it. So when the evidence says, all right, he admitted he shot both of them, he admitted it. And granted, it didn't happen the way that science tells us it happened. But guess what? That puts a nail in his coffin.
Yeah, Billy. Yeah, he thought up a lie. He thought it up quick, and he didn't do a really good job. Thankfully, he didn't have a lot of time and think it over. And as Phil said, I'm really glad that he did not lawyer up before he decided to come up with his statement. I guess as a 19-year-old, he did the best he could under trying circumstances, come up with an excuse, throw something out there. Who knows? But we're glad he said what he did, because that just makes it all the more suspicious, of his actions. And, and the fact that a firearm was recovered from the home. They may not have it matched up ballistically or anything like that yet, but probably my guess is one of the spent shells found at the crime scene was of the same make and caliber as the firearm, and maybe the ammunition actually still left over in that firearm. So it looks like it might have come from like the same box of ammo. So that's a good thing. They'll test it. They'll make sure that they'll dot that T, I, cross that T, probably in 24, 48 hours. But it was a good day for law enforcement. Good day for the San Antonio PD. Thumbs up to them. Absolutely.
Mike, I think they have already an outstanding case. And of course, they're not, they're by no means done.
No.
They have to, put this case together. But it's a very, very solid case. Will anyone else be charged? That's the question. And some of the sad things we hear of this, of course, is that, to me, it's sad that everyone knew what they were both doing, Matthew and Savannah. Everyone knew it. As a family members, can you stop them from doing it? Perhaps not. But, the fact that they knew Matthew had been shot at before while doing his rounds, I mean, you got to work a little harder trying to convince him, Matthew, this is not the business for you. This is not the business to be in as a 22-year-old kid, and it's only going to get worse. Here's the old perp walk.
Yeah.
Why did you do it? Are you sorry for what happened? Did you know Savannah was 9 months pregnant?
So that's a Ramon Preciado on the screen. I'm sure everyone's seen this multiple times.
You have to see your family. You have to see your family. About your side.
Hey guys, we're going this way.
¿Lo hiciste solo? ¿Te arrepientes? Anything to say to your family? Anything to say about the charges?
I'm not looking at this. You sorry?
They want to know why. Why'd you do it?
You sorry?
Did you do it?
Did you do it? You think he's going to confess right there as he's walking into the car?
No.
It's horrific, but
Why did you do it?
Did you know she was pregnant? What did you say? Huh? Did you care?
Why was it the whole family?
at this point, I don't think the press knows
What's
that
the
he's not
Christmas?
the shooter.
Right.
Anything? Why, man? Any remorse? You sorry?
We're too sorry for lying about what you're saying. I don't know what's going on.
Well, tell
You
us.
just make stuff up.
Tell us. What's going on?
Did you shoot them?
How did you kill them?
Are you in the
Unborn
video?
baby.
Did you kill them or did you just hide the evidence?
La mataste. Aquí no Savannah. ¿Quién los mató?
So that's Ramon Preciado, and Christopher will be getting walked out any minute now, and you'll see obviously the difference in demeanor between Christopher and the father, Ramon. Here we go. Here's Christopher coming up the I'm sorry, but here we go.
Did you do it? Are
you sorry you killed them?
You wanna say something?
Did you just hide the evidence?
What'd you do it?
It was unborn baby. Was it you? What do you say to your family? To Savannah, Matthew's family. Anything to say to the family?
Sorry? You sorry?
Well, we've all seen the perp walk multiple times. I just wanted, there's some really great information that came out today. The recap, the firearm used in this triple murder was recovered as per a search warrant on the home of Ramon and Christopher Preciado. It was admitted to by the police today by Chief McManus during this press conference that there potentially is a third person. And all you guys watching this said someone handed Ramon a white towel, someone that was inside that car. They've acknowledged that there is another person. Whether that person is going to be charged or treated as a witness is unclear at this point. So, and the San Diego Police Department, as well as the San Diego District Attorney, will hold that over their head to use that person as a witness. The other thing is, and I just can't say this enough, is that one spent shell we're hearing as far as from the arrest affidavit was recovered inside the vehicle that will be compared against the firearm that was recovered inside the home of Ramon Christopher Preciado. That will be a match. I'm almost 100% sure of that. So really, really strong evidence. But the most important evidence in this, and we talk about this all the time when we cover these cases, is the digital evidence. And by that, I mean, in this case, the cell phone belonging to Savannah Soto. And now that's not the only evidence. Now we cross-check her cell phone with the cell phone of Christopher Preciado. And you think there'll be text messages or phone calls in? And we do the same with the cell phone of Matthew Guerra. And as you could see, the voluminous amounts of evidence that this puts forth is going to be a very, very, very strong case. Mike.
Yeah. You know what, Billy? I was just thinking as you're mentioning that, I want to see the father, Ramon's cell phone too, because I want to see what the communication was between Christopher and the father to get the father over to the location where they met. And then they got the exchange, and the father came out with a towel. I want his, his cell phone too, because that will just give you a little bit more information. But the cell phone information is invaluable because it is unemotional. It is absolutely accurate, recorded. It has no, doesn't discriminate, doesn't favor one side over another. It is what it is. And Christopher and Ramon will have to live with it. And also the families of Soto and Guerra will have to live with the information that the cell phone has as to, what their intent was that day and what they were thinking when they left the apartment to go and meet Christopher. So that'll be very eye-opening. It's unemotional, and it is as real as it can get. And that's terrific information.
Mike, one of the things, and I guarantee almost everyone in our chat and everyone that follows Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories, they would like to know motive. What was this? What was this? And what we said early on, we said this was a drug deal gone bad, or this was a rip but it involved drugs. It was all about drugs or the drug trade.
Right.
So what is a rip? Certain people think it was a drug hit. But guess what? The prosecutor does not have to prove motive.
That's
He
right.
just has to prove his case, the intentional murder of 3 people. And that's what this was. And it's a capital murder case. So all those other things are interesting to want to find out, to try to find out why did he do it? What was the motive? And of course, you heard the story that Christopher Preciado told. Absolute bullshit. Just has no semblance of truth. And science will prove his words to be absolute nonsense. So that's the beauty of science. And I always say to all you guys that listen to us, investigation is an art and it's a science. And the science part helps to prove the art of investigation, which is actual police work, talking to people, knocking on doors, assessing the crime scene. But the real skill that detectives have, the biggest skill is in their skill to solicit information from people, to get accurate and clear information and be able to see the truth through lies. And that is the skill of detectives. And we take our hats off to the San Antonio Police Department, who did an outstanding job in this case. I can't say enough. I'll make you guys honorary NYPD. That's how impressed I was with your work on this. You did a fantastic job. Just I got to do a quick one. If you're looking for a great attorney in the New York metropolitan area, then Joe Murray is your man. Joe's a retired NYPD police officer, fantastic defense attorney. You can reach him at his cell at 718-514-3855. Email him at joe@jmurray-law.com or go on his website, jmurray-law.com. Not only is Joe a fantastic defense attorney, but a huge supporter of the Police Off the Cuff podcast. Again, folks, if you're not subscribed to us, go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, ring that bell, and share us with your friends and family. And I want to thank everyone for the support you give us and all the new subscribers we got from doing this very case. You can see the work we put into it and the skill level and the knowledge level we pass on to you. And we hope that you find this educational, entertaining, and every once in a while, a little bit humorous. Mike, your final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Thank you for everyone who's been tuning in, because this is an interesting case, very tragic case. And we'll continue to cover cases like this from this particular angle, from the cop angle, law enforcement angle. We're not editorialists or reporters. We've done this before. We've been to these sort of scenes. Billy, you've investigated 200 of these kinds of homicides, and Phil's probably done even more than that. And I've been the first responder on these sorts of things. Terrible tragedies, but this is the life that people lead, unfortunately. But I just asked everyone to keep tuning in and to support the channel. Thank you.
And folks, I also would like to just say we do sympathize with the Guerra and the Soto family, and we pray for their families and for the loss of their loved ones. Have a great day, everyone. God bless from Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories.
Good night.
One episode just ain't enough.